Hi, I'm Mark Schroeder from GSHC Surrogacy Agency, and today we're speaking with Eric Stovall, a surrogacy and adoption attorney in Nevada. How are you doing today, Eric?
Doing very good. Thank you, Mark.
What would happen if a surrogate did not use a surrogacy attorney?
Back when my grandfather was an attorney years ago, you took everything that walked in the door. Maybe it was a will, maybe it was a criminal case, maybe it was a contract, maybe it was a divorce, but attorneys just did everything that came through the door. Nowadays, attorneys shouldn't do this, and most of them don't. They specialize in various fields. And surrogacy is definitely something that's important to have a specialist involved. If you haven't kept up with the law and the very new and changing laws of surrogacy, you're going to have no idea as an attorney what in the world is going on. And that's really why people who are trying to do surrogacy, either as intended parents or as surrogates, need to have a qualified surrogacy attorney advising them through the process.
Can you explain what a surrogacy contract is and why that's important?
A surrogacy contract is the device, the written device, where we let the parties know, the intended parents and the surrogate, what is expected of them throughout the surrogacy journey from a legal standpoint. It's going to set expectations of the parties, what each party expects the other to do. It's also going to set legal contractual duties, what each party is required to do under the contract. It's also going to provide solutions in the event that there's some issue arises, some problem that comes up. They do from time to time. And a good contract will have devices or paths to lead the parties through to come up with an ultimate answer. A good surrogacy contract will have that. Surrogacy contract will also have remedies in the event that either party doesn't fulfill their end of the contract. There's a path set forward so that the other party can obtain recompense or some other damages from the other party if something does not work out as the contract requires.
What sort of consequences might an intended parent or a surrogate face if they were to be in breach of the contract?
If a party is in breach of the contract, normally what we want to do is not just go right into litigation. That's the worst thing that can happen. Instead, what we want the parties to do is, through the agency, have contact with each other to try to talk through and work out a situation that isn't going the way the parties expected, or the way the contract provides or requires. And what we would want to do is, once we've talked through things, if that still doesn't work, then under my contract, the one I prepare, I have a requirement for mediation. And in mediation is more of a formal process where the parties meet with an experienced mediator to try to explain their situation and try to come up with a situation with a resolution that both parties agree to. And then if that mediation does not work out, then and only then would we want to go to litigation, where we are requiring another party to do something or to provide damages. If the intended parents aren't paying what the surrogate is entitled to, having the intended parents pay that, or if a surrogate is not doing what the intended parents are requiring them to do in the contract, getting an order requiring the surrogate to perform in accordance with the contract. But again, the main thing is that we want the parties to have good communication, and a good surrogacy agency is going to help through that process.
Can you explain why a surrogacy agency is important to the process?
A surrogacy agency is important to this process for several reasons. First off, they're bringing an expertise that the intended parents and the surrogate just don't have. They're used to dealing with surrogacy contracts. They know how the process works. Many surrogacy agency employees have been surrogates themselves. So they have a very nice and unique perspective into the actual happenings of a surrogacy journey. A surrogacy agency will also, and this is important for the intended parents, will also do a good vetting job or investigating job of the surrogate that you are looking at as a potentially carrying your child. And that's important. You want to make sure that there's no criminal background for the surrogate or her spouse. You want to make sure that their background is clean, that there's no other lawsuits, there's no other red flags in that surrogate's past, because you don't want someone with a bad past carrying your child. That's really a recipe for disaster. And a surrogacy agency will help avoid that through their investigating process. Another important reason why you want to use a surrogacy agency is that they create a buffer between the parties. When the intended parent talks with the carrier or exchanges texts or emails, they can talk about the pregnancy and the fun things of the pregnancy and that type of feel-good conversation. But if there's a business issue, if there's a payment issue, if there's an expense issue that comes up that's not just not fun, then the surrogacy agency can come through and be the go-between between the parties to help iron out a situation and solve a problem before it really gets to be a big issue that we have to deal with. And the surrogacy agency does that, and they're very good at that. So all those reasons are good reasons to hire a surrogacy agency and have them help you through this process.
Immediately after the contract is signed by the intended parent and the surrogate, what are the next steps?
The next steps after signing the surrogacy contract is really for the doctor to take charge of. At that point, after the contract is signed, that's when the medical procedure can be done and the medications and so forth that are administered to the surrogate can be commenced. In Nevada, no medical procedure, including the medications, can be given to the surrogate before the contract is in place. So we call that having legal clearance. We must have legal clearance. In other words, have the contract fully executed by both parties before the medical procedures are commenced with the surrogate. That's important because that's a requirement under Nevada law, and we could have a problem with the parentage order if that aspect is not carried through by the parties.
And Eric, can you give an idea of what the ballpark cost estimates for the legal services for surrogacy in Nevada would be?
These are the prices that I charge, and I don't mind sharing this with my clients. I want them to know what to expect when they retain me and have me work for them. I charge $2,500 to draft the contract. If an experienced attorney has drafted the contract, I charge $1,500 to represent the other side. And I require an experienced attorney to be drafting the contract that I review, because a lot of times, if you're getting an attorney who doesn't know what they're doing, try to draft the contract, or is just taking a contract that they find on the internet and trying to make it work for this surrogacy journey, it's usually a train wreck, and I'm going to have to charge more for that. But if it's an experienced attorney on the other side, that's not a problem. I would charge $1,500 for that. As far as the pre-birth order process goes, the parentage petition, I charge $2,800 to draft that, plus court costs of roughly $300 to $400. If I'm representing the other party, I can represent either party in drafting the pre-birth order petition. But if I'm just reviewing a petition another attorney drafted, I charge $750 for that. And I think these prices are pretty reflected throughout the attorneys practicing in surrogacy law in Nevada that are indeed qualified. No doubt you can find someone that'll do it cheaper, but that's not what you want to have.
Does your office work with international intended parents?
Yes, Mark. Our office works with international clients on a regular basis. That's not a problem, whether it's from China, France, Italy, Germany, Australia. I've represented intended parents from many countries.
Can a surrogate decide to choose and select her own surrogacy attorney to represent her?
Yes, Mark. A surrogate can choose her own attorney. Nevada law requires her to be represented by separate and independent counsel. But I'll just caution this way. We want to make sure that the surrogate chooses a qualified surrogacy attorney, because the last thing we want to have in place is an attorney who doesn't do surrogacy work trying to advise a client through a surrogacy journey. That just doesn't work. So yes, a carrier can select her own attorney, but we would want to give her maybe a list of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 qualified Nevada licensed attorneys to select from. That's in her best interest, and in both also the intended parent's best interest to have only attorneys in the surrogacy journey that are really qualified surrogacy attorneys.
Does your office work with international intended parents?
Yes, Mark. Our office works with international clients on a regular basis. It's not a problem whether it's from China, France, Italy, Germany, Australia. I've represented intended parents from many countries.
This has been a conversation with Eric Stovall, a surrogacy and adoption attorney in Nevada. Thank you so much for your time, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Certainly, Mark. It was a pleasure talking with you and answering your questions. I look forward to, if there's any unanswered questions, be sure to contact my office. I'm happy to answer.